I'll share.
I think she will share. Okay. I will just do the introductions and then she can share the screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. So welcome everybody to, I think this should be the last BBT for the month of October. And we are privileged to have Dr. Zibah Nwako today to present to us on her PhD findings briefly. As usual, we'll still follow the same pattern today. We'll give her 30 minutes to briefly present, and then that will be followed by Dr. Monique with a discussant, just to summarize, but also more or less like also give some more insights about the topic today. And then we'll open it up for everybody so that maybe we can have reactions, feedback, but also inputs to the presentation. So just to introduce the presenter today, Dr. Zibah Nwako works at the University of Bristol on a prestigious postdoctoral research fellowship, which is offered by the UK Economics and Social Research Council, ESRC. Her interdisciplinary research interests includes African and post-colonial feminism, creative and participatory research methods, non-formal learning, and also youth entrepreneurship. And her career spans 30 years of experience in both academia and industry. I think there is also a link where you can find more about her work on social media. So let me hand over the floor to her to give us the presentation, and then I urge you all to participate and also interact and give positive remarks after the presentation. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation. Hi, Bertha. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi, thank you. We're happy to have you.
Thanks. So I'll just share my screen now. One second, please. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So. Right. Okay. So thanks everyone for having me. I'll just walk through my slides, and in the middle of my presentation, I'm hoping to have a little activity with you, if you don't mind. It won't take longer than 5 minutes, I'm sure. So thanks for the introduction as well. My session is going to cover my own journey into research, and then I'll look at an introduction to my research study and talk a little bit about the ways of knowing that I use, so knowledge construction and the colonial ways of finding out my, of getting my findings. Then we'll do the little activity, I'll talk about my findings, and then we'll conclude. So just to say that Nigeria, I am originally from Nigeria, which is a post-colony. It was colonized by the British, and we obtained our independence in 1960. So still quite a young country. And I was born and educated in Nigeria as well. My primary, secondary, and university, my first degree was in Nigeria. And then in between that and my postgraduate study, I did some work not only on the what I call the periphery of education. So I've always found myself not quite in the education sector, not working as a teacher or anything like that, but working as maybe setting up, I set up a business as a founder of after school clubs and holiday clubs. So I still was working with young people and with students, or probably volunteering in schools, but not quite in as a teacher or as a school worker. And then I had several years of self-employment in between as well. And that was where I discovered my, if you like, my passion for women and gender development. And that then led me to to thinking about how best to, if you like, serve women, develop women, especially young women. So I went back to school after 25 years, and I studied for a master's, and my topic of my dissertation was to do with informal learning. So the impact of informal learning on the aspirations of girls in rural Nigeria. So, teenage girls, secondary school students. And then from there, I thought, okay, I would go on further, study for a PhD, and again, look at gender, but then look at well-being and, how important it is for young female students. And I'll go on to explain more about that in a minute. Okay, so my study, like I mentioned just now, was to do with well-being, and it was as a result of the fact that I felt that from my own experiences as a student, as a woman student, growing up in Nigeria, studying in Nigeria, I must say I had very good teaching and learning. I don't remember having the same issues and problems that most young people seem to have today. But then, having worked with young people and having worked in gender and development, I found that those years, those formative years in university, they seem to be a transition period for young people getting from secondary school to adulthood. And those years are very important as they set them up for life, really set them up for life and the way they will function as citizens, as adults, whether in the workplace, whether at home. And I thought that even though my well-being had been very important when I was young, these people didn't seem to have the same kind of opportunities and the same kind of experiences that I had, So given that and the fact that I was very much interested in the gender aspect of it, I wanted to focus on women. What exactly were they going through? What exactly were their experiences? And that led me to choose the topic that I did, which was a critical participatory study of the well-being of female undergraduate students in my home country of Nigeria. Now, this photo that you can see on the screen is a photograph, an aerial view of the campus of the university where I actually did the research. I used two theoretical frameworks for my study. The first one by Professor White in 2010, where she talked about subjective well-being, and she came up with this pyramid or triangle of where she stated that that well-being was subjective, relational, and material, and that these three aspects were interrelational. So you can't have the subjective well-being without having the relational. Subjective being, what you feel within yourself, and what your own experiences of well-being are, to how you relate with other people and, what happens around you and where people are around you, as well as the material. So she talked about, within material, she talked about the environment and, how you experience things within the environment. And she said we needed all three aspects for us to have good well-being. I critiqued that a little bit because I thought, okay, I felt that the subjective well-being framework was quite Eurocentric, I felt that that there was a bit of it was very, very personal. And I know that Professor White discussed, you know, what happens around you, but I felt that there should be more of a focus on the fact that in Africa we have more of a collective well-being, more of collective settings, more of doing things together as groups. So I felt that subjective well-being was quite a Eurocentric framework. I was very interested in Nussbaum's capability approach, and I used that as well to supplement White's subjective framework, subjective well-being framework. I was interested in the fact that, and I used this as a starting point, but in fact that Nussbaum actually gave like what I call guidelines. So she talked about the central human functioning capabilities, including, you know, the list of 10 capabilities that she talked about: life, bodily health, bodily integrity, senses, imagination and thoughts, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, other species and how we relate to them, play, and the control we have over our environment. And I use that, like I said, as a starting point, because I thought this related more to the experiences I thought I would find in the field. And the fact that my participants, because I wanted it to be strictly critical participatory, so I wanted them to be involved in this. And this was a way of, I used this 10 areas to be able to relate to them and say to them and explain to them and say, these are the things I'm looking at. How does your experience speak to each of these areas? And so the other thing I would say is that Nussbaum also talked about human capabilities being a relationship between the personal, the intrinsic, what you feel within you and what you feel about yourself, as well as what happens around you. And I really found that very intriguing. I found it very interesting, and I wanted to explore more about that. And so I added that as a framework to the subjective well-being one. Now, as I said, I looked at ways of knowing, and especially decolonial ways, because I was working in a context or a setting where coloniality was a big thing. Nigeria is still in the process of working through the legacies of being colonized, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to relate with people, especially women, because I recognize that colonialism is very much entwined with the issue of patriarchy. So, and it's all about power. So whether it's the power over one country on another, from one country to another, or the power that men seem to have over women, whatever it is. So I used, I wanted to decolonize the way I found out about knowledge. And to do that, I was able to work with this young student and use methods that were highly participatory and very different from what usually is used in the university. So I find that most research that goes on in Nigeria is quite quantitative, is all about surveys and all that, but I really wanted to go deeper than that. And if you like, decolonize the methods as well. So I worked with these female students and used several methods such as participatory mapping. On the right-hand side, you can see the photo where I got a focus group of students and asked them to draw a map of the campus where they were. And I asked them 2 questions after that. I was like, which part of the campus do you like to go to? Where do you enjoy going to and why? And then which parts of the campus do you not like going to? And then why? And so they drew this, and then we had a discussion on those 2 areas. And they used the sticky labels to identify the parts of the campuses where they didn't feel happy going to, or they were happy to go to, and I pulled out the reasons why. The other method I used was on the left-hand side. This was one of in fact, my main participant, my co-researcher, and we used campus interviews, campus walk-in interviews. So what I did was I asked a couple of the participants to walk me around the campus, take me to places, again, using those two questions, take me to the places where you enjoy going to, and then even if say it was too traumatizing to take me to the places you don't want to go to, let's talk about it. Tell me about, paint a picture in my head, describe this place and tell me why you don't like going there. So those were two of the methods I used. I also used a method called vignettes, where between my field work trips, I pulled out some of the findings that had developed from the first trip. And on the second trip, I got a group of young women, and I said to them, and I just gave them these things and, these pieces of paper, what people had said on the first trip. And I said to them, so read this out to us and then tell us what you think about it. What do you think do you think this person is right? Does it resonate with your experience? Or haven't you experienced that at all? And so I use vignettes, those little vignettes from previous trips, to be able to stimulate conversation on my subsequent trips. Okay, so I'll take a pause now, and if I could get you involved here. And what I'd like to ask you is to take maybe 2 minutes to think about your own well-being journey. What is your well-being like? What has it been like as you went through your own years of education? And what is it like now as you're maybe working, or maybe still studying, or conducting your research? How would you describe your own well-being? What are the words that you would use to maybe 2 or 3 words that you would use to describe your well-being? And then if you don't mind sharing that with us. I'm not able to read the chat at the moment. I don't know if the chair can do that, or you could maybe unmute yourself and share with us what your well-being is like. So maybe we can take a minute or two. If you can just imagine it, write it down, or scribble it or draw it or whatever it is, and then share with us, please. Can I hand over to the chair now?
Yes, please. I was just about to type in the chat box. So I think I can invite the members just to probably jot down their responses in the chat box, and then maybe I can read it.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
So already we have one response from Monique, and she says for her well-being would be some sense of work-life balance.
Okay.
Yeah, balancing those two concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Since we don't have Mobley, we are still waiting for others. Maybe if you would want to expand on that, Monique, I can give you the floor.
I don't know if Zibah was referring to well-being limited to campus, as in her study, areas of a campus, or how certain areas make you feel. But progressing through academia, I would say well-being has left from being something how certain areas make you feel, as opposed to generally how your work-life balance ultimately makes you feel.
Mm-hmm. I would say for you, what would you say? Is it your work-life balance that is important to you?
Mm. Yes.
Is important for your well-being?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to also give us 1 or 2 words about well-being and how it affects you? What words would you use to describe your well-being?
Yeah, there are a few more responses. Prof. Feminist just says work and well-being and the achievements of self and others. Faith also talks about, I think, centers well-being around relationships. Vanilla, it's more about enhanced. Okay, it's more enhanced by friendships with others. More or less like the issue of relationships as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think Gabby says it's about connectedness, the community, and always learning. So yeah, there's that nexus between the community and also issues of well-being and also how that is viewed in terms of learning. Nikateko, same as Monique and Melanie, yeah, but would also add having a sense of purpose.
Ah, yes, having a sense of purpose. Okay. Okay. Was that one more?
Yeah, Edward, having a voice, relationships. For me, I would add a sense of entitlement.
Okay. In sense of entitlement about what?
Well, it's all about what makes me feel accomplished, I would put it that way. So like more or less like I'm entitled to certain traits that would make me feel complete as an individual.
Okay.
Yeah, so just adding on to what I think the others have already said. And Tim also talks about affiliation.
About what?
Affiliation.
Affiliation, yeah, okay. Right, okay. Okay, so thank you very much. So I've got work-life balance, relationships, and enhanced by friendships, connected to community, always learning, having a sense of purpose, having a voice, sense of entitlement and affiliation. So thank you very much for that. I would like then to share my very first finding. Before I look at what my participants talked about their own well-being. So my very first finding was a conceptual shift. And as I suspected, I found that well-being was not even a phrase that was that well used in Nigeria. First of all, from the readings from previous literature, well-being seems to be very intrinsic. It seems to be all about focused on, a student's health, their happiness, their contentment, comfort, satisfaction with their quality of life. I also found that because the first question I asked the participants was, what does well-being mean to you? Just like I asked you now. What is well-being to you? How would you describe your well-being? And I found that there was a bit of I got some funny looks. Well-being, well. Some people said, well, it's everything about you, or you from top to bottom, you from how how you feel inside and things like that. So yes, it was very intrinsic. But again, I went back to the fact that so I said, okay, so apart from well-being, how would you describe your general way of life? The way you react to things, to people, to what people say, to your environment or whatever. And I then found out that that the term, the concept that is used mainly at least in Nigeria, Nigerian education is welfare. And so I found that I had to shift my own thinking from well-being being so personal, so intrinsic, to the fact that there was this other thing, this additional thing. And so I found that welfare was more extrinsic. So from the literature, welfare seems to be the basic facilities or amenities that students look for to ensure that they are comfortable, that they are able to survive, and and they have a conducive atmosphere for learning. So for me, welfare became more, if you like, Afrocentric. It became more, this is what students in the global South go through, rather than, for them, it's not even about how they feel. It's not even about, you know, their happiness. It's not even about their contentment or satisfaction. It's more of, we need the basic facilities. We need to be able to survive. We need, you know, before we even think about the insides and how we feel, we need the external, the environment to be conducive for us. It needs to be comfortable. You know, we need several things to be able to outside of our own agency or our own making, to be able to even feel that happiness, or to be able to function within ourselves. So that was the first finding I had. And then that led me to the rest of my findings. So, and I have termed this, this led me to develop a new conceptual map about what welfare meant to a student, not just the well-being. So the welfare of a student, then comprised of their well-being, which is intrinsic, personally, but then their well-being is affected by everything else around them. So the sociocultural aspects of studying at a university, at an African or a Nigerian university, their academics and how that affects their personal well-being or their welfare, the political aspects of campus and, you know, being a student, the environmental aspects and the economic aspects. And I'm going to explain and give examples of each of these as we go along. So, starting with the environmental, one of my co-researchers sent me this this photo. It is a photograph that depicts the typical rainy season in Nigeria. So the rains have fallen, and the wall that you see across that road is the wall of the campus. On this side of the photo is lots of student accommodation. So students who live off campus live on this side. And so my participant says to me, what we do in the morning is, when I get ready for school, I come out of my block, my student accommodation block, I walk to the main road in my you know, bathroom slippers. This is what we call bathroom slippers in Nigeria. So I walk to the main road in my bathroom slippers because I know that the main road is always flooded. So I have to cross this road to school gate. And when I get to school gate, I buy what is called in Nigeria pure water. So there are little sachets of water that are sold. And so I buy pure water, wash my legs and my feet, put on my normal shoes, and then I go into campus. And this is what they have to face even before they get into the classroom, or they get into, you know, get into the head frame or the space to learn or to be taught. Now, the other things I pulled out from this finding is how does this affect their health? Because we know that, you know, waterborne diseases affect health, and for women, in fact, the WHO came up with a finding from some research that particularly for women, you know, when they are exposed to these kind of environments and they're exposed to these over a long period of time, it could lead them to ill health later on, even to, you know, not being able to have children or having difficulty having children and things like that. So it can be very, very serious for women especially. So that was the environmental aspect. Now going on to the academic finding, Patricia, who was one of my co-researchers, she said well, to do with teaching and learning, she says some lecturers are very good and they break down lessons for us to understand. But some use opopo grammar. Opopo grammar in the language. Opopo means big or very big English, you know, English that we cannot understand. And she says others hardly come or not at all. That is to class. And she says, but I used to approach my fellow students for help because the lecturer's office is unknown to us except to course reps. I'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. So we're thinking when it comes to academics, you know, sometimes they don't understand what the lecturer is saying. It is not broken down to them in simple, understandable language, you know. They have the problem of the lecturers, some of them not turning up at all, or some of them coming very late to class. And that what then happens is when it comes to exam time, there's this mad rush. So lecturers then turn up and start giving the classes, and you know, like somebody talked about, you know, teaching 3 textbooks within a week. And so the students get confused and they now have to prep for exams day and night, you know, and that also affects them, affects their welfare, affects their well-being. Like I said, I'll talk about the lecturer's office being unknown except to course reps in a bit later. Now, yes, so the political, sorry.
Interrupt, yeah, we are running short of time. Probably in the next 5 to 7 minutes, we should be winding up.
I'll be finished, yeah. So, well, the political aspect of it, talking about course reps again, one of them said, we've never had a female SUG president. Girls are not allowed to run for presidency or even as course reps. And that's where that course reps matter came in. So for the student union government, the SUG, formally, the university has a policy where anybody can apply, anybody can vie for the presidency. But informally, the practice is that female students are not allowed to. And they are sometimes even discouraged from applying. So you find that the SUG president is always male. The deputy president is then female. Same thing for faculty reps, same thing for course reps. So politically, their hands are tied, and that has an impact on their well-being. For the sociocultural aspects, I witnessed this myself when I attended one of the classes, and one of the lecturers said to a student who was, you know, talking a lot, and he pulled her out to the front of the class, and he said to her, "Look at you, talking. That's how you will not listen or learn anything." And he said, "And you know you're a woman. I want you to know that if you're a woman and you get 3rd class, your husband will be making mockery of you until your marriage ends." And so, you know, the way they find that the way they're addressed, the way the lecturers talk to them, or even some of their male counterparts talk to them, you know, it diminishes them. It diminishes their confidence and their well-being. And then the economic aspects. One of my participants, Chimdi, she said that the prices of foodstuffs in the market, it affects the girls a lot. We girls feel it. One, it disturbs our study time. It exposes us to molestation because we cannot afford to eat, and so sometimes we go out of our way to be able to gain money or get money, whatever, and that gets us involved in activities such as prostitution. You know, so and then, you know, sometimes for male students, she went on to say that for male students it's easy for them because they can go get a job easily. But for female students, they're not so, if they try and do that, then they're exposed to, you know, people taking advantage of them when she talked about molestation. So those are the economic aspects that affect a student's well-being. So I developed that conceptual map, and I now use it in my current work, termed it as an African feminist framework for students' welfare. This is what I'm using in my current postdoc work. And so normally when I present, I try and end with a provocation. And I would like to end this one with asking you, as you go away and think about, you know, your own well-being, your own welfare, and those of the students around you, the ones you know back, you know, in your homes or, you know, in your families or in your community, and think about these different aspects of their lives and how, you know, how we can improve aspects of students' well-being, female students' well-being, how we can use decolonial ways to develop them, to develop their well-being and give them a sense of agency if we're able to. And that is it for me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zibah, for the quite engaging session. I think moving forward, I will now invite our discussant, Dr. Monique, to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chimame. And thank you, Dr. Zibah, for your talk, for your presentation. It was very informative. Thank you for sharing your research with us. I'm just going to share some thoughts that came to mind while I was reading your work. Unlike others here, I have been familiar with your PhD research because it was introduced to me by Prof. Walker earlier on. And this obviously is coming from it. I would like to state first and foremost that I found your research extremely interesting because, as you rightly said, there's very little work on female students' well-being at the university all over Africa and their experiences of higher education. It's also rare for us to see us asking young people about their well-being, not imposing on them, but asking them, how do you feel? What parts of this campus makes you feel good and doesn't? And that was particularly, I like the idea of that participatory mapping project, and found it and I could tell it would be something that would make the students think outside of the box. And could also tell that the campus walks would be obviously more in depth than a casual interview that would take place face to face over a desk, more formal, more structured. And the campus walks would obviously bring in more creative aspects to asking. I have certain issues though and questions regarding the way you framed your theoretical frameworks, the choices you made with regards to your theoretical frameworks. And I hope you'll be able to share a bit more about that with us. For one, regarding your choice of White's well-being framework and Nussbaum's capability list. And I kept wondering, okay, so how did you decolonize these? Because these are both Eurocentric theoretical frameworks. So how did you decolonize them? What did you inform them with that was African feminist? Or how did you interrogate them to make for an African feminist lens or a decolonial lens with which you would then use to analyze your findings? And that's what I kept waiting for. I didn't get that part. So I hope you share a bit more with that on that with us. I also had some inquiries. Did you see, because typically people use Nussbaum's list and adjust it to make new additions to the list or edit the list to different forms. And I was wondering, did that come up with you? Did you change the list, morph it in any other ways? And I found that I found it very interesting and obviously a large finding when you said you found that well-being was too intrinsic, and we do not accept the concept of well-being in this context. We are more familiar with the concept of welfare. And I was wondering, in this case, some might see it as more of a linguistic thing, something lost in translation. And I agree with you, though. It's not really lost in translation. It's just that this seems too individualistic for us. Whereas this welfare is more, okay, is it okay for all of us? It's what we're more used to. However, I also pondered on that could it be also a socialization issue? Whereas you have been socialized in a context where you have been taught not to think of yourself alone, or thinking of yourself is selfish. Thinking of your own well-being is selfish. And you're being told that you shouldn't express, even if you do think of yourself, you shouldn't express it. Because you will be made to you'll be looked at as selfish. So you only express what is communal, what is good, what is acceptable, the welfare. And I was also wondering if you would say a lot of what they were listing as welfare was also what could be seen as well-being. It's just that welfare seemed more safe to use. So these are the thoughts that came to mind when I was thinking of your work, and I hope we'll be able to discuss more about that. I really want to learn what you'd say regarding how you decolonize whites and Nussbaum's theoretical approaches to be able to use it in your context. And I can also see more questions coming in the chat box from Prof. Walker. Would you like to approach those ones first, or should I read this to you as well, so if you can see them?
I cannot see them, no.
Okay, let me read. Prof. Walker just, her question here was, she says she really likes your analytical well-being framework and sees it as very interesting. Have the ideas been shared at your university where you did your research?
No, they haven't yet, no, because the reason for that is because just as I finished, COVID hit. And so I haven't been able to go back and liaise with them. And also at the same time as COVID hit, there was in Nigeria, there was a lecturer strike. The academic staff had a year-long strike in 2020. So that's disrupted the academic calendar. So I haven't been able to go back and share my findings yet. But I'm hoping to do that within my 2 years of postdoc work, yes. Okay, so shall I deal with your questions now? Right, okay. So the first one was to do with how did I decolonize, use the post-colonial framework with those two frameworks, right? Those two theoretical frameworks. Okay, so well, as we know, things are different in a colonized country. And so, yes, I accept what you've said about those two frameworks being quite Eurocentric. And my way of decolonizing was to frame the concepts in those frameworks in Nigerian way or in an African way. So like I said, when I was presenting, one thing I asked was, what does well-being mean to you? And I got blank looks. They're like, okay, yeah, it might be this, it might be that, they were all guessing. So I had to restructure my questions and then ask, right, in your situation, what are the things that make you feel happy? What are the things that make you feel sad? What happens to you? What happens to you that impairs your mood or whatever it is, yeah? And so that was when I was able to get the answers that showed me that for them, it wasn't even about, first of all, it wasn't about, like I said earlier, it wasn't about how they feel. It was about the things that happen around them, first of all. And that's why when you said about, is it anything to do with socialization or is it linguistic? I wouldn't agree that it's linguistic because they had pertinent experiences that showed me that, no, it's nothing to do with well-being itself as we see it or as the West sees it to be. It is actually to do with experiences. It's actually to do with experiential knowledge, first of all, before you get into how they feel. You get into the intrinsic parts. when you talked about socialization and, you know, how our people have been taught, or our young people are being taught that, you know, it's not good to be selfish or to talk about the self. Yes, and which is why I then found that there has to be a balance. You were talking about work-life balance. There has to be a balance between me and how these things affect me and what is happening. And that is that was one of my recommendations, because I found that, yes, it's all about we, us, and, you know, how things are happening to us. But I also found that they don't have the support within the universities to deal with the issues that are happening to them. Yes, they have the guidance and counseling units, but nothing happens there. You know, you found people saying, yes, I went to the unit, but there was nobody. I couldn't talk to anyone. So what they do is, one of my participants said, she says, we advise ourselves, we talk between ourselves. And, you know, somebody tells me the problem they have, and I tell them, this is how I would solve it. Do you see what I mean? So they don't have that support that they should have. And so I was one of my recommendations is that if they are too afraid to talk, because there's this culture of fear that I found, if they're too scared to talk about, you know, themselves and what's happening and being seen as selfish, then why don't you band together, come together, form a group, and then have one voice, a collective voice. What else? Oh, you talked about Nussbaum's list as well. Did I add anything to it? Did I take anything away from it? No, I didn't. I used only about eight of the capabilities on her list, because those were the ones that applied to my context. So, for example, the one about other species, that didn't come into play at all. So, but I didn't add anything to it or whatever. What I actually did was I think I expanded on White's framework. So where she had only the subjective, the material, and the relational, I then, you know, broke that down even more and added, you know, environmental, made it a bit clearer. So yeah. Was there anything else? Have I dealt with all your questions?
Yes, for my questions, you're fine. Fenella has a question. She says she's interested to know the role of emotion and affect as an element of welfare or well-being for the students.
The role of emotion or affect as an element of well-being or welfare. I think, Fenella, could you expand on that? I'm not too sure what.
Thanks, Zibah. I just thought, you know, you asked them how various places on campus make them feel. So your initial, you know, a lot of your query was driven by feeling, but you also said that eventually it wasn't so much about feeling, it was about their experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
But surely feeling is in there somewhere. You know, or were they disconnected from emotion? You know, Nussbaum talks about emotional capabilities. So were emotions suppressed under other capabilities, or yeah, I'm just sort of intrigued as to what happened to the feelings, because surely they don't just go away. And, you know, they can drive action, and yeah. So I just wondered what happened to them and what you saw coming through.
Yeah. I in fact, as Monique said, you know, like when, you know, she talked about socialization, you know, they like, again, in most of Africa, the thing is not to talk about oneself. The thing is to talk about us as a group, us as you know, how it impacts of us, because you find that when people, because of that culture of fear, when women students put themselves forward, there's a backlash against them. So, you know, they feel, is not, I can't really speak up. I can't really, who am I to say something unless I know someone who will help me or who will support me, as in maybe a member of staff or whatever. I can't really put myself forward and complain about anything. So yes, I would say that their emotions are suppressed, but again, the way they deal with their emotions is when they talk to each other, when they try and support each other. Speaking out about their emotions doesn't happen. That doesn't work for them, they found. I'll give you an example. When one of my participants suggested that I touch base with a group in Kenya, the Women Students Welfare Association at Kenya universities. And I did touch base with them, and I happened to visit them and learn more about their work. And when I was about to go, I spoke to my participants. I'm like, oh, I'm going to visit this group. And they're like, well, it might work there in Kenya, but it wouldn't work for us. We're not allowed to, we can't say anything about what's going on. So I would say, yes, their emotions are suppressed. They don't have the spaces to be able to deal with or speak about them and deal with them.
Thanks, Zibah. Like a sort of adaptive preference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We have a hand from Emmanuel. Can you hear me, Emmanuel? I would like to give you the floor so that you can pose the question.
I can hear you.
Before you respond, I can also probably read a few questions so that maybe in the interest of time, we can handle them together.
Hello, Zibah. Very nice presentation. I actually enjoyed it. I know you conducted your research in the Southeast, so the location you showed. And knowing what Nigeria is like, there's quite a big diversity. So the experiences of people in one location might be different from people in different locations. Did you get the chance to investigate the experiences of people in other areas, or is that something you plan to do? Because actually, when we think about the context of Africa, when we say decolonization as well, it's very complex. There's a much wider discussion around actually where we go with that. So I think I just wanted to know whether you've thought about doing that or whether you've done that already or how you plan to take that forward.
I did speak to somebody during the course of my research, and her suggestion was, why don't I come to a university in the north of Nigeria and find out what's going on there? And she said to me, the issues are different because the north is predominantly Muslim, and what the female students are going through a lot more than what I think. And I had to keep within the remit of my PhD study. Yes, so it might be something that I'll explore during my postdoc years. I don't know yet. Thanks, Emmanuel.
I would like to add to note what Emmanuel just said, and that would definitely be something that you may want to consider as you're using that framework.
Yes.
To add some African feminist scholarship to it in a way that can make it more
yes.
wider African.
That's right.
And the questions coming in from Mikateko.
Yes, I think before I read those questions, just as a follow-up to the question, I think that was just by Emmanuel. I think for me, I was more interested in just finding out how you chose your respondents. Maybe if you could give us a bit of more insight on that. Mm-hmm. And then I think I'll just read through some of the questions. Mikateko asked if you can also explain more or say more about how you expanded on the wide relational dimension of well-being based on your findings. But also Gab is interested in the different spaces that your participants liked going to and did not like going to. So can you also give example of such spaces?
Okay. It's one example of the places that my participants like to go into. One of them talked about, a couple of them talked about that photo that I showed you with the moldings and the structures. That was the arts department. And some of them talked about how sometimes when they feel bad or feel low, that they go there, they look at these moldings or postures or whatever, or whatever it is, the arts moldings, and they look at them and think about the kind of lives those people would have lived and how different it is from what the lives they lived. And sometimes they feel happy, they look at the paintings and it brings them some joy. one of the places where they don't like to go to. One of them talked about a place where she had experienced rape, and that was something she did not obviously want to relive. And so that aspect of campus was a no-no for her. She didn't want to go there. One other question about white, how I expanded on white's framework was, and a very, very important was also sociocultural, because again, because it's an African context and women are treated, or women don't have as much agency as they should be, especially women students, as they should have, then the sociocultural aspect was quite important, which didn't quite feature in White's framework. And that's featured a lot in mine. How did I choose my respondents? First of all, I asked for a gatekeeper from the university, a female lecturer who was able to talk to a few students. And I met with the students, and some of them were interested, some weren't. And then from then on, my initial participants were able to get more students. But the problem was, again, the epileptic university calendar. I had to work with the university calendar. So some of the times when I visited, there were not students were at home because something was happening. Maybe there had been a strike, or either were on holiday or whatever it is. So I had to work with what I had. But the ones that were interested and did take part, gave me sufficient data.
Okay. Any follow-up questions? I mean, to the issue that have just been, the questions that have just been responded to. If there is anyone who wants to come in with a follow-up question. Okay, we have 5 more minutes, but I guess we might have exhausted everything. I need to be guided whether we can curtail the discussion, or maybe there's anything that might come in relation to the discussion, in relation to the webinar day or not. Otherwise, I would like to thank. Yes, was someone trying to speak?
I was just going to say, Chimwemwe, if we've got a few minutes, I don't know if there's anything that Zibah wants to add that she perhaps didn't have time for.
Okay. Yeah, over to you, Zibah.
Yes, there was a lot I didn't have time for. Yes, but I'm very grateful to your suggestion to expand the remit of the African feminist framework and include other areas. Yes, I will be very interested in again revisiting the students in Kenya, and definitely going into northern Nigeria, because I know that's, like I said, the issues are many, and they are not the areas are totally different. So yes, I'll be going into those aspects as well. So thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, I think this marks the end of, well, there's a hand. Sorry. Okay, yes, there's a hand from Gabi. Please, you can go ahead.
Hi, Zibah. Yes, thank you. That was very interesting, really interesting. I just wondered, when you were talking about the distinction between well-being and welfare, and Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs came to mind, where people's survival, the need for food on the table, shelter, all that, before you start thinking about self-actualization or whatever he called it. Do you think there's an element of that here, that people just can't engage with intrinsic aspects of well-being until the infrastructure is in place for them to be safe and, to have food to eat and stuff?
Yes, I strongly believe that. Yes, that was what I found with, in my research. Yes, they couldn't. they couldn't engage with the intrinsic parts of it. You know, they couldn't, I had to drill down quite a bit, you know, so when they say, oh, this was how this person spoke to me in class, I then had to ask something like, so how did that make you feel? To be able to get the intrinsic aspects. Yes, so yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dika also has her hand up.
Yes, yes, Nick, you have the floor.
Thanks. I just wanted to double check if you had responded to my question on how you expanded on the relational dimension of well-being on Watts's framework. I'm not sure if you did respond to that. I might have missed it. Yeah, just wanted to check that. And thanks for your presentation.
How you expanded on White's relational dimension of well-being based on your findings? Yes. Well, White's, I must say that White, I think it was in 5 years later in 2015, developed a whole new aspect of relational well-being following the subjective, and she reckons is really, really important. And I think, you know, had I known about this maybe earlier on, I would have probably used that framework. But yes, during my own research, again, I found that the relational was important to the students because of the social aspect of their relationships with one another. And I think that's developed as a result of the fact that they did not have the external or the institutional supports that they should have had. And so they relied a lot on, you know, peer support. So for that, it was important to them. Following on from also what White mentioned about relational, she talked about the relationships maybe in schools, because I think she used her framework in some country in Africa and one in Asia, I think Bangladesh. She talked about in schools where the relationships between students and their teachers or their instructors. I, in my research, didn't find that there was much of a relationship between the students I spoke with and their lecturers. There was a bit of a them and us going on there. So I don't think they had that much of a, I would say, trusting relationship between them. So it was more of peer support, peer engagement in my research. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I think reaching this far, on behalf of course, Prof. Walker and also Beth, who is the coordinator for the BBTs, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Zibah, for this wonderful, engaging and thought-provoking presentation. I think there's quite a lot that we have learned, and I think we have just opened up webs of communication, and I'm sure that most of the respondents should be able to get in touch with you through your formal communications in regards to probably taking the discussions further. Also, thanks to Dr. Monique for playing the discordant law. I think it's also been some thought-provoking issues that you brought up. And finally, I think thanks all the participants for their questions, the feedback, and the inputs, which have really enriched the webinar today. Until next time, I wish you all the best and have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Betha. Thank you, Professor Walker.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Monique.
Thanks, Zibah.